This is Sportscentre.
Hey, I'm Marissa Bird on this digital Sports Center presented by Montana's Barbecue and Bar. And just like that, the NHL trade deadline has passed. And let's start with the most shocking news of the day. And that came right at the buzzer at the 3 o'clock Eastern deadline. As you know, dramatic things do. As Brad Marchand is moving from the Bruins to the Panthers. An absolute blockbuster. It just is so sad. I realize that as a Leafs fan, I'm supposed to hate the Bruins, but you know what? I hate Florida more, if I'm gonna be honest, and I've grown to love Bradley Marchand, okay? All of Canada loves Bradley Marchand. How can you do this to us? And they said this on Trade Center. But now you have Brad Marchand and Matthew Tkachuk on the ice together for the playoffs. Are you kidding me? How is that even fair? I'm not looking forward to the matchup, I'll tell you that for free. And looking at the Stanley Cup odds, it's no surprise that the Panthers are now the favorites to repeat at 5-1. Now onto the biggest name on the board, Mikko Rantanen. Last night and into this morning, it looked like he was going to be a Dallas Star, as Dallas and Carolina had agreed to the framework of a trade. But a contract extension with Dallas was contingent on a trade happening, and the two sides could not reach an agreement, with Darren Dreger adding that Dallas is willing to go to $12 million a year for the extension. From their own Chris Johnston added that other avenues are being explored. Well, 4 hours passed, and after all that, he just ended up getting traded to Dallas, with 2 first-round picks and Logan Stankoven headed back to Carolina. As Rantanen is traded for the second time in 6 weeks. Now, a big part of this Rantanen sweepstakes was the money. That number 12 mil was thrown around earlier. But even before that, there were reports that Rantanen may have wanted even more. Well, a $12 million AAV was what he and the Stars agreed on, over an 8-year period, and yes, there is a full no-move clause. Aren't you exhausted? Don't worry, we'll have more on Rantanen later in the show, as the boys from the bar downstream will go fully in depth on the deal. Okay, now that we got those huge moves out of the way, let's shift over to the Canadian teams. And you know we're starting with the Leafs, as they made a pair of big moves, including adding one of the top names on TSN's trade bait board at the start of the day, acquiring Scott Laughton and a 4th and 6th round pick from the Flyers in exchange for a conditional 1st round pick and Nikita Gravenkin. Philly will also retain 50% of Laughton's salary. The 1st rounder heading to Philly is for 2027 and is top 10 protected. With more on the deal, here's our guy, Craig Button.
It's going to take some of the pressure off of John Tavares. So because now you have a third-line center that can get there. Max, to me, is not a third-line center. And, you know, I like Max in the open ice. You know, you got Bobby McMahon, you got Matthew Nyes. You can switch them up in terms of, maybe not Nyes because he's so good up on that top line, but you can swing Max Domi out. But to get a center and Scott Laughton there and just lock him in there and take some of that pressure off of John Tavares. Yeah, and I think that helps.
I don't and will not ever disagree with Craig Button. The Leafs weren't done there, as they also added defenseman Brandon Carlo from the Bruins, which honestly needed. All of the experts were saying all day the Leafs need defense, the Leafs need defense, the Leafs got defense. And they also needed size, and this guy is gigantic. The Jets also made a pair of big moves. Let's start with their deal with Pittsburgh, sending a 2nd and 4th round pick to Pittsburgh, with Luke Schenn coming back to Winnipeg. And they weren't done there, as they also added Brandon Tanev for a 2nd. The Sens made a pretty big move today as well, as they pushed to try to break that playoff drought. Well, they made a deal with one of the teams that has a bigger playoff drought than that, as they sent Josh Norris and Jacob Bernard-Docker to Buffalo for Dylan Cousins, Dennis Gilbert, and a 2nd round pick. And on the surface, it seems like Ottawa won this deal, with that 2nd coming back their way. Cousins, who was the 7th pick in the 2019 draft, was having a difficult year in Buffalo, with just 11 goals and 20 assists so far this season. The Oilers didn't make a move today, but they did last night. We're going to get to that in the next block. Now, outside of the action today, we had some big moves last night as well, as they saw one of the biggest names on the trade bait board, Brock Nelson, as well as William Dufour heading to Colorado. For Callum Ritchie, Oliver Shillington, a 1st in either 2026 or 2027, as well as a conditional 3rd in 2028. The Islanders will also retain 50% of Nelson's salary in the deal. Now, the Nelson trade went through just after midnight, so technically that was the first deal of trade deadline day. Now, the Oilers also made a move while many of you were probably sleeping, as they acquired defenseman Jake Wallman from the Sharks in exchange for a conditional 1st round pick and Carl Berglund. A nice, much-needed add to the Edmonton Blue Line. As we told you earlier in the show, the biggest name on the trade bait board, Mikko Rantanen, was dealt to the Stars. And Dallas is now fully loaded for a potential cup run. But instead of hearing me talk about it, let's go to DZ, Luca, and Puck and get their breakdown.
So Mikko Rantanen left the Central Division, and then he came right back to it, and the Carolina Hurricanes went from being like, whoa, super exciting contender, to I don't know what you are.
I think if you look at the whole scope of business that Carolina did, moving essentially Martin Necas into all these assets they turned into, it's not that bad. It's actually pretty good for value. But when you look at what we thought the identity of this team was, and that's hopefully a Stanley Cup contender, and the fact that they're worse today than they were yesterday, and they're worse today than they were over a month ago when they traded for Rantanen in the beginning, I think this is just a colossal failure for the Carolina Hurricanes. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that they're one of the biggest losers of deadline day. And if that's harsh, so be it.
On the other side of it, Dallas, probably the biggest winner of deadline day. You add Mikko Rantanen into the mix to a team that's kind of rolling, could challenge Winnipeg for first in the Central, may end up playing against the Avalanche in the first round of the playoffs, which is wild and something that I don't want to see. As an Avs fan, like, I get the whole state tax thing, and the $12 million is different in Dallas than it would be in Colorado if that was even offered. Truthfully, like, I have mixed emotions about this as an Avs fan, where, like, part of me feels a little burned by him, but also a part of me feels like they got what they could and realized that he really was either going to want to test the open market or get a contract that was upwards of $12 million, and they got what they could for him. So at the end of the day, that's kind of what you have to do, and it's the risk reward of it, and it's turning out to be okay so far for them.
Well, if you're going to lose on deadline day, at least if you lose and get a lot of assets, I don't think anyone can really call you a loser, Carolina.
Well,
I think we still can.
I think
I'm not.
they wanted to win the cup this year, and it's going to be a lot harder now. So,
Okay, so we all learned that you guys hate Carolina. Great, thanks. Tomorrow's International Women's Day, and I realize it's supposed to be a day for celebration, but I do find that on Women's Day, women have to do more work, so I'm really happy that it's falling on a Saturday. Last week, I got to spend some time with the athletes of the Northern Super League on their media day, and could not have been more impressed. And I asked them to give me one woman in their life who inspired them.
I'm going to shout out to my mom. She's looking down at me from the heavens above, but she was my biggest supporter. She drove me to every training session. She was on the end of the phone when I was having the hard days, the good days, through the highs and lows of my career. So wouldn't be where I'm at today without her.
Charmaine Hooper, she was the player on the national team that I wanted to be like. She was the reason why I wanted to play for the Canadian national team. But the likes of Christine Sinclair, Sophie Schmidt, Diana Matheson, all of them, I always looked up to them when I was a young player on the national team. They're my friends and they're also my idols.
Football, I must say that my coach, Katrine Pedersen, she's not only a great player and a great coach, but she's simply an amazing person.
Carmelina Moscato, she's super inspiring, driven, doesn't give up.
I think my mom, I know that's maybe a cliche answer, but she was always so supportive and never put any pressure on me or my siblings to, do anything. It was always something that we wanted to do, and she was behind us 110%.
My sisters and mom, sort of an easy answer, but they are prime examples of just being incredible women.
Probably say my mom. So intelligent and logical, and I would say she's probably perfect.
My wife, because 4 months ago, she had an emergency C-section. It's been incredible. Since that moment, she has been healing and training. And I have this absolute honor of, at the end of training, I get to hold my boy. And during training, I get to watch this woman who's so inspiring.
Might be cliche, but my mom, huge reason why I'm still in soccer is because she gave me that confidence to be myself and to go after whatever I want.
One woman that inspires me is my mom. She was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, and she's been in and out of the hospital. So strong, so positive. She's always so grateful for what's around her, the people around her. If I could be anything like her, I guess I could say I could give myself a pat on the back.
Of course, mom is the overwhelming answer. My mother also inspired me to be a strong, independent, self-sufficient woman. She also encouraged me to quit track because I wasn't fast enough. And let's finish with something really special to me and, to be honest, everyone at this network. As tomorrow's Special Olympics World Winter Games in Turin begin. And you can watch the opening ceremonies tomorrow on TSN at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. And I'm just so proud of all of the athletes that I got to meet that are now in Turin, ready to compete for Canada. We're just so unbelievably proud of you. But it doesn't stop there, as we'll have Jesse joining us all next week from Turin to bring us the latest from Special Olympics World Winter Games. And if he's in a country like Italy, we're gonna have to get his opinion on some of the food, but if he doesn't give the right opinion, he's cut off. Also, petitions just say it the Italian way. Let's just say Torino. Must we say Turin? Let's get a grip. That's it for today's Burger Monday. Have a great weekend.